Stretch It, Technique 17 from Teach Like a Champion 3.0.
Hello, this is Daniel Bowe. We're going to be working from Teach Like a Champion 3.0 Technique 16, Stretch It today. Well, what is Stretch It? Stretch It is summarized in Teach Like a Champion as the reward for right answers will be harder questions. We need to put this in context of my previous two videos, which were no opt-out, where we take a non-answer to an answer. Right is right, where we take a partially correct answer to a correct answer. And now we have a questioning technique where we take a correct answer and we extend it with harder questions, or we'll see later, like recycling some prior knowledge, something like that. The important thing is that right answers are not the end of the process. When you have a student that answers correctly, they need to expect that they're going to be asked to do more. So why would we do that? Why are we going to stretch it? Well, first of all, we're constantly trying to build our classroom culture to be more academic, and this sends that message that we are always going to push for more. No matter where we are always going to have that growth mindset and be going farther. As a teacher, it gives you the opportunity to go deeper. It's kind of the Singapore method of deep, not wide. So getting that deep understanding and drilling down really helps students hold on to that knowledge for longer. And this also gives us an opportunity to connect to prior knowledge. So we may go back to something that we did before and connect it to this and ask somebody to synthesize or similar. So the question is, how do you stretch it? So as a teacher, you need to make a habit of follow-up questions. So when a student answers a question correctly, not every time, but enough to make it obvious that it's going to happen regularly, you need to ask a follow-up question to get more from that student. You need to ask different kinds of questions. We'll talk about what kinds of questions in a minute, but if you're always like, why? You could keep asking why, and you could ask why a million times, and it will get some results, but you're going to get better results if you vary up your kinds of questions. You should probably ask different students. So probably at this point you're thinking, hey, I need to, ask the same student to go deeper. But you may very well move to a different student. For example, if you know that this student is weak and they've answered a question correctly, and that was already a stretch for them. Maybe you brought them there with no opt-out, or you brought them there with right is right. You can move to a different student and differentiate this way, cold call another student and get a slightly deeper question. And it doesn't look like you are abandoning the first student, because the first student had success, and now you can give another student success too. And you need to make sure you're building positive culture around it. So generally, I ask teachers who are developing these, don't take them all on at once. Start with no opt-out. After you've got no opt-out, that culture built up in your classroom, you need to move on to right is right. And after you've got that right is right culture, then you can move on to stretch it. And it doesn't take that long. It's not like it takes 6 months or anything. But if you try to put all that in at one time, the culture in the classroom isn't set up. And it's going to end up being a little bit negative if you try to throw all that at one time. So you need to make sure that we stay positive around it. So what types of questions can we ask? How or why? I kind of already skimmed over that one. But you can ask how something works, or why it works, or why that method is applicable here, something like that. We can ask for another way to get to the end result, to get to that answer. So we may have an answer. We can ask for another way to get it. And as a math teacher, I use this one a lot. So I use all of them a lot. but another way, there's always several ways to solve a math equation. So I may, especially we're doing something like algebra or we're doing a geometric proof, we may try to get alternate ways to get to the same result. Look for evidence is another thing. Ask for evidence. And for my language arts teachers, this is always a big thing. We're always looking for textual evidence. And getting students to provide that textual evidence is an obvious next step in students giving an answer. So, how does the character feel about this other person? Oh, they're angry. Well, how do you know they're angry? what in the text shows you that they're angry. And students can provide quote, and this is, of course, great experience and practice for them. We can pull in a related skill. Again, I'm going to go back to math. So, I may ask, okay, so if that power of 2 was a power of 1, how would we solve this differently? We've already solved linear equations. We can also recontextualize something, put something in a new setting, especially if we're looking at reading comprehension or something. We can ask a question about how things would be different if. I put in here back pocket questions. That's my name for them. Sometimes if you get into a line of questioning that you haven't prepared for and you don't know what kind of Stretch It questions you would ask, these are good. Of course, that why that I mentioned before, but you sometimes don't even need that. You just say more, keep going, kind of give them a nonverbal cue to keep going, and they can provide their own kind of non-directed answers. One of the most important things for Stretch It is to not let it drag. So we can't use Stretch It all the time, and we can't take an enormous amount of classroom time on Stretch It. We have to be strategic about how we use Stretch It and when we're using it, and use it in the best places possible. So that's our presentation on Stretch It. This is Technique 16 from Teach Like a Champion 3.0. It's under the academic ethos section. I appreciate your time, and if you are a teacher trainer, I highly encourage you to make Stretch It and my other 2 videos on this topic, No Opt Out and Right is Right, a core part of your new teacher training